Hi, I'm Tobi Shinobi, and this is how I create.
Welcome to This Is How We Create, a show that digs deeper into the creative life of contemporary artists of color. Discover what feeds their creativity and how they found or are finding their artistic voice. Through these intimate and candid conversations, you'll gain insights into the lives of creative professionals of color that are hard to find anywhere else. Welcome back to This Is How We Create. On this episode of the show, we chat with former lawyer turned photographer Tobi Shinobi. During our time together, Tobi opens up about his initial forays into photography. He details the pivotal moments that ignited his passion for the craft and the hurdles he overcame in defining his unique aesthetic. Tobi underscores the crucial role of cultivating strong relationships and how to embrace constructive criticism and the ethos of lifelong learning to thrive in the dynamic world of photography. Not only that, Tobi introduces us to his 7 out of 10 principle, which he champions for helping him create meaningful and consistent work that he thinks of as excellent. And I think all of his followers and fans would agree. Now, for a little bit about Tobi and his background, Tobi Shinobi is an award-winning international multifaceted photographer and videographer based in London and in Chicago. His work extends from high-profile events, product photography, and architecture. Tobi's international reputation and keen work ethic has resulted in him becoming a Sony Global Imaging Ambassador, Adobe Lightroom Ambassador, and in him being headhunted to work as senior content creator in an award-winning creative agency. Following that, he became the creative strategist for TikTok. Please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with Tobi Shinobi. I guess the one question I have for you is your name and how you decided on Tobi Shinobi, because a little bit of digging tells me that your name is otherwise.
My name is something different. It's very close to Tobi Shinobi. It's Tobi Shinobi, and it kind of came about. People have how it's spelled isn't necessarily how you would think, or people definitely look at the way when they see it written, they pronounce it Shonibe, and it was just getting mispronounced, and I have to correct people and so on and so forth. One day, someone came up to me in the playground and said, "Is your name Tobi Shinobi?" And I was like, Shinobi was a popular video game at the time, and I do have an appreciation for Japanese culture, and people often ask me, in fact, no one's asked me about whether it's appropriation or not, which I'm kind of glad, because I think there's a difference between cultural appropriation and appreciation, and I definitely wouldn't want to offend any of my Japanese friends and family. What I will say is that there are certain things about Japanese culture which I very much appreciate, and I do try to incorporate them into my practice. If anyone did find it disrespectful, I would take time to ponder whether it was something I wanted to continue, but it's definitely said with the utmost respect, and in no way am I trying to kind of step away from my heritage. I am Black, there is that, right? So I am more than happy about that, my origin. So that's how it kind of came about. It was a nickname that got attached to my Instagram feed. It just felt fun, playful, and memorable, and then it just became the thing. And I just have clients coming up to me and say, "Oh, you're Tobi Shinobi. I've been saying it. We've been saying it around the office all day. Tobi Shinobi, Tobi Shinobi, Tobi Shinobi." And so it just stuck. I don't know anyone else who goes by that. I've seen random accounts try and claim the name, but nice to meet you. I'm the one and only Tobi Shinobi.
And the original.
The original. Yeah, for sure.
Can you tell me a little bit about what a young Tobi Shinobi from the playground thought or wished for himself as a grown-up?
Yes, it's a great question, Martine. Growing up, one thing that was very clear was I was interested, and I'll say decent, at a number of different things. And that, for many people, is a gift. For me, it's been a gift, but there's also a curse element to it, in that I did not know what I wanted to do, and all of my counterparts really knew. They were like, "Oh, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to be a boxer, I want to be a singer, I want to be a rapper," all that kind of stuff. And I just did not know what I wanted to do, to the point where my mum took me to a careers advisor, and I punched in a bunch of different things, and the list came back. To tell you how long ago this was, do you remember the pieces of paper that kind of concertina like that, and they had the dots down the side? Reams of this, of all the different things I'd be good at. And the guy was like, oh, this is great. Look at all the things you read. And I was like, no, I came here to kind of narrow it down. So I did law because I wanted to do something which was going to challenge me. I wanted to be able to make money, and I wanted to be able to help people. And so, and then the fourth factor was, careers advisor said to me, law applies to everything that we do. Every single thing we do, there's a law kind of attached to it. And so I was like, all right, great. I'll do this because it means I haven't kind of like really narrowed down exactly what it is. But as a kid, I was always, that kid was obsessed with fairness. Like, you know, if the teacher was cutting up a cake and, you know, one piece is small, I was like, oh, that's not fair. Balance has always been a thing for me. So these principles that play out in photography in terms of balance, fairness, and all that kind of stuff. Me going on to do employment law, where there's, you know, trying to move away from a world of discrimination and trying to make sure that things are balanced and equitable. All of that comes from me being a kid. I was always trying to, like, I was always very inquisitive. I always asked questions. Even playing with Lego, I was a big fan of Lego. We would make toy cars, like, you know, you build out whatever. And I'd be patient enough to wait for the right colored blocks to make sure that my car was symmetrical. The other kids just didn't. It just didn't bother them like that. So I just, from a very young age, I was always asking questions, always mindful about the design of things. And I noticed it set me apart from some of the other kids.
Symmetry is such a huge part of your work. Tell me about starting to think about that and being aware of that as a young kid, and how you came to sharpen your eye, really, as you started dabbling with photography.
Yeah, so I'll tell you about, like, when I picked up a camera and stuff, and I was just taking pictures of things which were interesting to me. It was just really a mishmash of, like, all different things which interested me. When I started on Instagram, you know, I think everyone does the whole taking pictures of their food. And, you know, I had some interesting couplings. I was taking pictures of those. So when I started out Instagram, I was taking pictures of, like, these really interesting, like, things I'd see, maybe some graffiti here or interesting outfit. It didn't become more intentional until I started seeing other people, like, they had a theme, they had something that you could, like, really look at. I was taking pictures of graffiti and just walking around Shoreditch and things which interested me. And Shoreditch is an interesting place because it has this juxtaposition of old and new, which I really appreciate in London. You have some world-class architecture that is very, very new, but you have world-class architecture which is very, very old. So there's always something. And then just around the corner, Shoreditch had just this graffiti, and I got to a point where I realized that, like, taking pictures of graffiti, I'm like taking pictures of other people's art, and it just didn't feel like it was cool enough for me. I wanted more. And so architecture became more of a thing which I felt I could add a new perspective to. So I started focusing on that. And that's when I started playing around with composition and stuff. You look at some of my early stuff, which I get teased about. I was shooting everything with a Dutch angle, and that was my way of kind of adding a new perspective to things. And I was trying to make it a thing, and eventually it just kind of fell away. It just wasn't going to be timeless enough for what I was trying to achieve. So I remember I get busy at work, because I'm still a lawyer at this point. I'm a litigator. I get busy at work, and I stop taking pictures. I get invited to a wedding. I start taking pictures at the wedding, and the groom's mum worked for, you may be familiar with this, there's a publication in the UK called The Voice. It's a black publication. She used to work at The Voice, and she saw my work, and she's like, she likes the pictures I took as much, or if not more, than the actual person we shooted the wedding photos. She's like, oh, do you ever do any portraits and stuff? And I was like, no. So I come down. So we ended up working together for a while, and I really get into portraiture, working with models and stuff. And that was a really cool period of time in my photography journey. But the thing that kept on happening was people kept on turning up late. And that really irks me. So I was like, I don't have time for this. I don't know if this was same in your photography journey, but like for me, when I realized I really enjoyed photography, I wanted to do it more. I got obsessed with it. So someone slowing down the vision, someone slowing down the progression, just I couldn't accept it. And so I went back to taking pictures of buildings because no matter rain or shine, they were there. I didn't have to worry about makeup, didn't have to worry about hair, didn't have to worry about contributing to anyone's travel or I'm going to be late. They were there. And so that's why I started focusing on architecture in the way that I did. And I was able to just really hit the ground running and just really find my voice in that era. But other than that, if, 3 or 4 people hadn't been late, I probably would have focused much more on fashion photography because I do have a fondness for fashion. My ultimate, I do sometimes describe some of my work as being unfinished. My ultimate is to put interesting people, interesting faces in interesting places. That's, for me, is like prime photography. But I've got into this rhythm where I'm good at what I do. And times when I do get to, set up a shoot and I get people and they're on time and stuff, I think that work I do is good as well. I really enjoy it. But yeah, just reducing the variables.
Yeah, to reducing friction as well. Yeah, I think as a lifestyle photographer, my work is with people and with brands, and the process of a final image is one that it takes a while. I used to think, oh my gosh, it takes such a long time. Because I used to think when I first started building my portfolio, and I started building my portfolio when I was living in London, and someone said, oh, it'll take you 2 years to build your portfolio. And I was like, 2 years? And then when you realize if you're a lifestyle photographer, it does take that long because you're collaborating, right? You're collaborating between the makeup artist, as you mentioned, the prop stylist, the art department, all of that stuff. And then there's the assistants. You have to figure out what the lighting is going to be. So you don't just press the button. There's all of the work that does go into it prior to you even getting the talent on the set.
It's
editing, intense.
There's burnout. There's, I'm sick today. There's so much.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Gosh, so from here, how long did it take you to create your portfolio until you felt like you understood what your style and your voice was is?
That's a good question. I unfortunately don't know the definitive answer to that. What I can say is one of the benefits of having worked prior to becoming a photographer was just picking up different principles from different places and then putting it into a photographic sense. So being aware of the market, right? Looking at what other people were doing and thinking about what extra can I bring to this particular niche that no one else is doing. So the style of photography I'm doing, there were other people doing similar things, but I was like, what can I bring that people will specifically come to me for? And I felt there was a lack of finesse. So some of the locations I would visit that were just kind of like public domain that everyone was going to, they would shoot it, but the editing might not be on point, or the composition, it may not be as straight as it could be. I made sure, again, legal background, attention to detail, right? Just looking at the bigger picture, all of these principles. People always tell me like, oh, law, photography, big shift. I took the principles, I distilled what I needed from that, put it into photography. And so I just made sure that everything I put out hit a certain standard. I remember a friend of mine looking at my phone one time, I was scrolling through, he's like, you haven't posted that, you haven't posted that, you haven't posted that. And it was all the stuff which I felt didn't meet the standard of what I needed to put out. And he was like, no, this stuff is good. And so I had to implement this own set of rules, principles for myself. I called it the 7 out of 10 principle, because everything I posted at one time, I felt was a 10 out of 10. It had to, for example, the edit needed to be on point. It needed to be consistent with my other stuff. The symmetry needed to be on point. The composition, it needed to be hopefully something new. So there was like these, 5 to 10 principles I wanted in every photo. But I realized I was leaving so much food on the table. By doing that, I made it so as long as it hits at least 7 out of these 10 principles, it could go on the feed. And it just allowed me to be way more productive and a little bit more relaxed in how I was doing things. And I was able to, at my peak, I was posting 3-4 times a day. And that's when I saw my most growth, because, in order to be, good on social media platforms, you want this level of consistency. So I remember it would get to, I think it would get to like 7 o'clock, I would post, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And people were seeing stuff that they hadn't seen, or seen outside of London that they hadn't seen before. And it was quality each time. So some people may have seen those shots before, but the edit was on point, and the composition was on point. Maybe there was a slight concept to it, or there was something slightly different that they hadn't seen before. But that level of productivity allowed me to like really just organically grow really, really quickly. And then that got me attention of people at Instagram. So I became a suggested user that allowed me to kind of boost as well. And then at this point, I'm really in the community. So people from different cities who are big fans of London, where you are based can be a real boost to, your profile. They're seeing shots of London like, oh, I haven't seen that part of London. I haven't seen that part of London. So when they come to London, I'm also making myself available for people who, want to go shoot. So I'm having people from Germany, from America saying, oh, can we go and shoot? And so it was just a fun form of currency to be able to kind of share these locations and share these photographic experiences with people. And then you make these lifelong friends. So yeah, that's how I was able to kind of like really hone and find my voice. I made sure I looked at something that I was going to enjoy shooting a lot, and found out what was also the intersection, the Venn diagram, right? Like, so this is what I wanted to shoot. This is what I knew was going to be successful. And I found enough of a space in this bit here to just keep on delivering on that. And that's how I was able to get to a point of learning what was both commercially viable, but also what I wanted to shoot.
Oh, that's so clever.
Yeah.
And I love the word that you're using, which is one that I use all the time, which is work that's commercially viable. You want to show work that your audience will love, but then work that shows true, that's true to you. Can you outline what it is that you go through? Because I don't think that's something that a lot of people have heard of before.
Yeah, so the 7 out of 10 principle basically is like there's going to be certain things which, if I'm putting out work with a view to it bringing more eyes to my work, there were certain things I'd identified as being like super helpful. So, but for example, looking across the board, if you take Instagram now and you look at stuff that is like trend to change, but like we know that people like color, right? So looking for interesting color. We know that people like texture, looking for interesting textures. Instagram has matured over time, and portraiture wasn't a thing that people really appreciated when I was starting out, but it became viable as I was, so putting an interesting character in something, an interesting pose. So this is obviously like 3 things now, right? So then if you're shooting something someone hasn't seen before, that's going to add to it, right? And making sure the composition is on point, making sure the lighting is on point, making sure that there's no distracting factors, right? So you start getting like really high up in some of the list of things that you can do. If you try to put these different things, I like to use food analogies when referring to photography, right? So if you go to your fridge right now and take all the ingredients out and put them into a meal, it's going to taste horrible, right? So the purpose of the 7 out of 10 principle is not only to make things more relaxed for me, but also to realize that if you're looking for photos which have all of those elements, that in of itself can be the thing which could probably detract from it. So using those as guiding principles rather than you have to have these things just became a way of me kind of working out like, okay, cool. If I can have 5 out of these 7 things right now, then this is a good place to start with the photo, and then everything else will kind of fall into place.
That's lovely. So it sounds like you are you're self-taught. How and where did you go to learn? I know that you taught a class on Creative Live. I saw that a while ago. But where did you get your education? Or was it just by going out? Because I mean, you talk about composition, color.
Yeah.
There, as artists, we need to look color theory. We need to really know about composition. How did you get your education?
Yeah. So I am self-taught, and I think the interesting thing about self-taught is there's benefits and detriments. The benefit to being self-taught is, especially if you're a very driven person and you're ambitious, is you only learn what you need to learn. You only focus on, oh, I saw this person did this technique, and so you are obsessed with trying to work out that particular technique. Problem with it is you don't know what you don't know. And the transition from being self-taught to being a professional photographer can be rocky for a number of people, because how to save files with the correct naming conventions, how to comport yourself in email when conducting yourself with clients, how to follow up in a way which is assertive, goes right up to the line of being assertive but not aggressive, and that blurry line that is painted for many of us self-taught creatives. I was fortunate, again, I had a legal background, so I know how to have those interactions, but I know some of my counterparts who are just as talented, sometimes maybe more talented, don't know how to have the business side of things handled. And so I taught myself a number of different things through initiative, treating people how I'd like to be treated. And then, I just went to the University of YouTube, just speaking to friends, trading knowledge. I have a good friend called Ron Timihin, and we talk about coming up the ranks together, and we just had a number of conversations together. Another friend of mine, Chrissy Beth, similarly, she had a professional background. She used to be a lawyer as well. She became a photographer, and just having that notion of how do I professionally comport myself? What things do I know for business which I can implement here are going to make this more viable? We apply for jobs all the time, but as freelance photographers, there is this notion that has come about through social media that we have to wait to be invited. And there was a period of my career when I was like, I didn't feel I was getting the love that I should be getting, or the opportunities I should be getting. And so I think I sat down and put out maybe about 20 letters to different agencies saying, look, this is what I can do. And my first big jobs came about as a result of that. And unfortunately, since then, I haven't needed to pitch myself in that same way. But anyone out there, if you're listening to this and you're wondering why you're not getting that call, much in the same way a job doesn't call you up, most of the time doesn't call you up to say, come and apply for this job, reach out. Freelance jobs are much less regular than a regular job. So, work out how best to approach these agencies and stuff, and start putting work out. Again, on that principle as well, I'm very much about the principle of this kind of work karma. And what I mean by that is the work that you put out is the work that you're going to get hired to do. So I can't complain if I'm not getting people asking me for portraiture, because I'm not really known for portraiture. People are lazy. So they're going to go to my feed and look at my feed, and they'll probably look at the first 9 grid, right? The first, 3x3. They may scroll down a little bit, but people typically are busy, right? I'm putting myself in someone else's shoes and thinking, okay, cool. They're trying to find a good photographer who's going to do a good job. They've probably got a list of anywhere between 20 to 50 people they're going to look at. They're going to go look at the feed, scroll up. They may scroll a second or third time, but if they have to do that a bunch of times, they're looking at nice 9 images that you took, probably. They're going to click on your link in bio, go to your website. Is this person professional? And I'm going to say this, it's a hot take, maybe an unpopular opinion, but please, my photography friends, please pay for a domain and have your website go to your name, not at gmail.com. It's photography. We're about visuals and aesthetics. That is it's a strong message. So just it's a little change. Like I'm not throwing shade at anyone. I love you guys. But just get, MartineSéverin.com, TobiShinobi.com. Get that. It just shows a mark of professionalism that you cared enough about your business to say, yeah, like I care about this. Like your attention to detail I know some of my friends are going to come at me for that statement right now, but I'm here for it. Bring it on.
I will agree wholeheartedly with you. I think it's necessary because it's one way of letting people know that you're serious and that you're an actual company and that you might actually have like a team of people working with you. It shouldn't be Tobi Shinobi at Gmail or Yahoo or AOL for Pete's sakes.
Because the main names at this point are so cheap. It's like a little thing. It's almost like, there's that meme about hearing the fire alarm going off in the background, and like just take the time to just tweak that and change it. We're in the business of aesthetics, and I think you're sending a message to and this is not to say I've got friends who are very successful who still have a Gmail, and they're doing really well for themselves. But I think it kind of sends a slight message to, even a subconscious message, to potential clients that your business isn't doing as well, that you can afford to do that, and you're choosing not to, or you can't afford to do it. And so it's just little things like that. Have that attention to detail, that finesse to your business. Spelling mistakes in your emails aren't fatal, but if it's littered with spelling mistakes, it just suggests that your attention to detail may not be there. And we're in the business of sending messages to people all the time, whether it's a visual message or a written message. I think these little things are things which have helped me over time to get to the point I am, where people want to work with me and they'll trust me in other aspects, right? If I'm expected to deliver 100 assets, I only sent 76, then they're like, oh, well, I did notice a couple of spelling mistakes and stuff. And it's like, we're human, we make mistakes, but do what you can to send a message of finesse and professionalism. Again, these are little changes that we can make to kind of really improve how we're perceived. And I do think, again, this is probably another hot take, I do think that, sometimes as professionals of color, I think sometimes we are held to higher standards. So I'm not saying it's good or it's right. I'm not saying it's the only thing that matters, but like, if you can, if you know better, do better.
Thank you so much. Particularly since when, as a freelancer, when you're hired, your success really reflects on the team that's hired you or in the person that hired you. Because when someone hires you and you're untested, they're vouching for you in some way. And there's a big budget usually behind you. And if the deliverables aren't met, it's bad overall for not just you.
And I think the other thing is as well, again, like to any of my up-and-coming photographers who may just want like a little bit more guidance, think about it like this. It's easier to retain relationships that you've established than it is to go out and find new business. So if you have been selected for someone, like, ask them for feedback and work out like where you can kind of grow and build up rapport. Just politeness goes a long way in this business. I'm not going to get into like respectability politics or anything like that. I just want to say, like, when you have someone that you've worked with, saying thank you to them and just working out how you can make their life easier, they're going to be like, oh, I really enjoyed working with this person. They didn't make my life harder, right? There's a balance to knowing your worth and not having people take advantage of you, but retaining the relationship is easier than trying to go out and find new clients, for sure.
So, Tobi, is that how you think you've managed to have such great relationships? You currently are affiliated with Sony, with Adobe Lightroom. You are now at TikTok. Are those some of the kind of methods that you've used to make sure that you cherish those relationships and to cultivate them?
Yeah, I was raised to kind of treat people how you like to be treated, and I do think that sometimes social media has been great in some respects, where people can get gassed up and be like, oh, now that they're getting the invite, now everything's on my time. To a certain extent, like, well done. You've been invited to the game. Like, bring that self-worth to the platform. But also remember, like, there's a number of people, like, if you mess up, there's someone willing to kind of jump in and take that place, and they could probably take it. The people are willing to undercut you at the drop of a hat. So for me, you know, seeking feedback, and then this is something I know in general, people don't really like constructive criticism. I actively seek it, and it's definitely been something that has helped me kind of maintain relationship, because especially being someone who's a Brit and being based in America, the way we use language is often different. Like I've learned that saying thanks a lot in America can be perceived as sarcastic. It's like, thanks a lot. Where in the UK, if I say thanks a lot, it's like, thank you very much. So paying attention to how people perceive you, getting that feedback, working out how you can improve for next time, all of that's invaluable. Like some of that is as valuable as the payment that you're receiving, because if Adobe has perceived me as being a little bit lax in some of the assets or the timing of bringing something, chances are Sony may perceive me that way. So building those relationships and building that rapport, and not just expecting people to just kind of turn up for you each time. You know, you got to know what the market's offering. You know your worth as well. Know your market rate. I definitely am always paying attention to like what other people are doing. We've got to stay adaptable. You know, so initially started out as a photographer, and when I started seeing people do all the selfie stuff and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, man, I'm not doing any of that. I'm not doing any of that Snapchat stuff. And then I saw the way the market was moving. I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to get in front of the camera and start doing it. So you know, you make sure your setup is good. Your lighting, skin routine and regime. Make sure everything's looking good, and you know, you work on the skills to stay in the game. You don't want to be that person who had the ability. You know, you get the spotlight, and then you're literally handing the mic to someone else because you didn't have anything to say or you weren't able to adapt. So maintain yourself, but know how to adapt in different situations, and know your limitations, but you know, push yourself. I know some of this is what I'm saying maybe somewhat contradictory, but it is a balancing act. All of it's a balancing act.
And in so many instances, advice is contradictory because you have to know when to apply that advice to whatever situation
Absolutely.
that you're in. So speaking of things that may be contradictory, my last question for you is, what is a piece of advice that you received that has been really bad, or a piece of advice that let me rephrase this. In your career, what's the worst piece of advice you've ever received, or what's the best piece of advice that you have received?
The worst piece of advice I've ever received was don't become a photographer. Wants to be a photographer in this day and age. The market is oversaturated. And if I hadn't become a photographer, I wouldn't be sat here with you. I wouldn't be in America. I've been able to travel the world, make long-term friendships, change my life. I've been on red carpets, I've bought stuff I never would have thought I would be able to buy. I moved the whole country. I've had my work featured in Times Square. I've won awards. I work at the fastest growing startup of all time, all because I believed in myself. That was the worst piece of advice I've ever been given. And I'm glad I didn't listen. And I understood where the person was coming from, but know thyself.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It was really lovely to talk with you. And I know that our listeners are going to walk away with so many great nuggets.
I appreciate you reaching out. It's been great fun. Actually, probably some of the most fun I've had on the podcast. So thank you for having me. Keep in touch. Hopefully see you in Chicago or South London or something.